call this meeting to order. We'll go ahead and get started. Approval of minutes from our last meeting. Anyone would like to make a motion?
Motion approved.
Okay. Second. Any discussion on the motion? No, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, passes unanimously. Thank you. New business. We have a lot of projects to discuss. We have almost a full house. Some folks visiting us from out of town. Welcome. Excited to see everybody's work. Great. Let's go ahead and get started with our third item. Price Woodard Jr. bronze bust. And we have a recommended action to approve the RFQ. So we're looking at an RFQ for this bronze bust. And do we have, okay, there, great. Go ahead and tell us about
Hello, Tim Kellums, Public Works and Utilities, here to talk to you about a Price Woodard Jr. bronze bust. I can get into it, but we don't, Danny, correct me if I'm wrong, but we don't really have that many bronze busts out there. So this one's a little bit unique compared to what we normally do, but feel that that's warranted for this space. So, generally with these RFQs, provide an initial background and introduction kind of into everything. The biggest thing to note for a Price Woodard, most of this is fairly standard, but the budget for this one, and we're planning to use $40,000. Part of that is because there's not that many, well, first off, it's bronze. Also, it's a bust, knowing that's going to take quite a bit of time to try to make it a lot more detail. It's, after a person, there's a living person. So trying to make it as realistic as possible. We are limited in the numbers of photographs that we have of Mr. Woodard. So that makes this, again, a little bit more challenging. So I figured that there's going to be quite a bit of time that needs to be spent to try to refine the details for the bust. And this, again, is for planning to go at a Price Woodard Junior Memorial Park, which is right along the river. In 2022, the City Council sold a piece of property of the park. It was not heavily used. It was sold to the Hyatt. They had plans to expand their building. It was not programmed. It's really not that valuable in terms of recreational programming for the city. So the proceeds for that, City Council wanted that to be used and put back into the park. One of the recommended actions or things that the money be used for is to help tell the story of Mr. Woodard. And so Mr. Woodard was a city attorney, or excuse me, he was an attorney here in town. He was on the City Council. He was also the first appointed Black mayor of the city of Wichita. It was during some racial tensions in the city and helped provide some guidance and lead the city through that. Unfortunately, Mr. Woodard did not live that much longer after he had served and only served one term. So here are just some ideas of some of the busts that we're thinking about. Nothing too big, no statue or anything more, again, more of a bust. We are a little bit limited again in those photos. So we think having a bust, something a little bit more personal than just a giant statue, felt more appropriate here. The biggest thing that we're going to want to try to determine and work on, and we'll go through that with the RFQ. And it's, again, just to remind you, an RFQ versus an RFP. So we'll be looking for qualifications because it is pretty standard. We have, some photos. It's pretty, we don't need anything abstract or something fully created, more in the details and trying to get the likeness of Mr. Woodard put together. And I think qualifications serve that purpose more than a proposal. So again, here are just some examples that we're looking at here. I think determining exactly if the shoulders are included, things like that will get nailed out as we get a little bit further along. And again, for the park background, right now, it's right next to Century 2. It's but we acquired it in 1972. There's quite a bit of history with that site, especially given with Century 2. It's heavily used during Riverfest and all those different things going on at Century 2. So I think it would be a great location to help talk about Mr. Woodard. The final art location, we have a pretty good idea for it. One of the great things about having this as a bust is that should something happen along the river or, Century 2 down the road, a bus can, always be relocated. It's not some giant sculpture that we're going to have to move around and all that. So that's the great thing about a bus is how mobile it can be in the future. So here's some reference photos. Again, we don't have that many. We are trying to work with the family to try to get some photos. So still working on that engagement, trying to find that there is still family in the area and trying to get, again, more photos and things like that. So the general site location, the plan is to be around the fountain that's there now. Don't want to keep it too tucked away. We think having it close to Douglas and Waco would be a good idea. Make it kind of more visible and out there in the open. We'll work with the guards to find the exact location. We have some in mind. Pretty much, you can see my mouse there. We think up over in this area would be good as you're entering into the park, so we don't have it hidden off somewhere. But we'll get through that when we work with the artists and hopefully come on site and determine the best location for it. We plan to have it, I guess on a pedestal, have it with a plaque to kind of tell his story. Instead of just having some random bus out there, we want to make sure that we vet through the story, make sure that it does tell his story accurately and provides a bit more history and context for the bust. As I mentioned earlier, we're thinking life size for the pedestal and it'd be $40,000. Again, wanting to make sure that we're not we're giving the artists enough time and money to thoroughly flesh this out. Eligibility. This is more of a national search for this. I think being limited a little bit, being close to a boundary, and just those that are working with bronze, especially doing something as lifelike and real, something abstract, maybe a little bit more local or regional, but we felt that given the complexity of trying to mimic someone with limited photos, felt like that a national call would be appropriate for this. And again, through the selection process, we'll have a selection committee with city staff. The design firm, we don't really have a design firm for this one, and then any relevant stakeholders. And then interviews are not anticipated. Again, we have the qualifications that we can look at and go off of that. And selection criteria, I think this is pretty normal to what we generally have. Again, make sure that they're professional in their creative process as they go through it, and then the ability to represent the bronze sculptures accurately will be important for us. So I think if someone has no bronze bust, I think that would be a bit concerning. So we'll go through and make sure that they have actually done bronze busts and bronze statues in the past. The submittal requirements, that's pretty standard for what we generally require. And project timeline plan would be to, if approved today, to get it submitted by the end of the week to get it out there. We know it's going to take some time to get through all this, so I think the plan would be to present to councils and boards on early next year and then start doing art and fabrication in the spring of 2026. But thank you. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from council?
I have one question. Will the 40,000, I think it's a very fair bucket for a bronze bust. I would caution against equating the value of the movement, but of course with the bust, it makes sense to have a very realistic approach. Will this include to the base or the pedestal?
Yes, yeah, that's what will be included in that as well. Yeah, we're planning to, I don't think turnkey, but essentially they would include everything. Yeah.
Awesome.
Another question, do you outline the intended size of the bust?
We had life size. So we're planning on something relatively, a normal head and shoulders, nothing too big or out of context.
Any other question? Okay, so we're looking for approval of the RFQ, right?
Yep.
Yep. Do we feel then comfortable getting this out to the world as is? Yep. Okay, can we get a motion then for approval?
Move to accept the RFQ for the A. Price Woodard Junior bust as presented. I'll second.
Yeah. Do you have any discussion on the motion? All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Okay, passes down. Thank you. Second, yes. Thank you. All right, so now we go, to the next item, we have the Arkansas River corridor, the West Bank. We're gonna be looking at 30% development, meaning we're looking at concept designs, okay? We do have some folks that are visiting us that are gonna be talking about this. Excited to see what's in store. Hi, welcome back.
My name is Jeff Best. I'm a landscape architect, formerly with LK Architecture's design firm, now with Baughman Company, and we're administering overall and doing inspections. With me is Courtney Lederer. She is the art consultant. She's also contracted through construction and our three selected artists back here. It's been a little while since we saw you. A lot of what I'm going to show you up front, I'm going to zip through this really quickly because you saw last time I was here. This is just a general overview. But since then, we've gone through the process of inspection, and that's what we're talking about mostly today. So I won't bore you too much with this. Again, some contextual photos, what was out there. Some of our goals for the project, obviously enhance the overall aesthetic, increase the accessibility, keep the continuity of the corridor through there, and reflect the spirit of Wichita along the river. Again, contextual imagery. These are previous projects we are really matching in forms and in materials as we move south along this next section. An overview of the overall project. Obviously, the hotel has kind of gotten started. You've probably seen some of the concrete there. Down there is the selected contractor for the city's portion, and they've been out there. We actually did a sheet pile along the river's edge over the winter, and now they're out starting on retaining walls and stairs. And a few images on the south end, kind of looking north. And yeah, the hotel will look a little better than that, so don't worry. Our first part of this area is actually in this lower right-hand corner. We've got some equipment there for dewatering of the baseball stadium, which couldn't move. So we have some, we felt that was a good opportunity for part to help with that situation. Getting access from upper to lower promenades was one thing that we really focused on. This is the second area. Actually, there's two. These areas kind of in the upper left and upper right are kind of left more or less intentionally void because we anticipated these areas of the art opportunity. And then the pilaster walls, you can kind of start seeing, there's probably better photos. We all identified as a nice canvas for something to happen. Kind of an overview of those art locations. We actually had three originally identified for public art number 2. We actually backed that off to 2 locations as we went through the process, as it made a little more sense, especially with the amount of money we had to spend. This one.
Yeah, this is one of our locations. Our selected artists will actually come and speak about that in more detail to share with us. But yes, as Jeff was just alluding to, we invited, as it notes here, for the artist to either conceal or distract from those elements. So they have the option to really do that. And you'll see a really exciting sculptural piece that we've decided to include, that includes a nice, really beautiful tie to Wichita. And then this site as well, we were really looking for an artist who could have a design that was both structural, as well as incorporating seating and potentially shade as well for this site. So again, we have another artist here who will present in more detail how they've devised a solution for that in a really powerful and intriguing way with all the three artists we have here. And then finally, we have these walls that we've invited a third artist to respond to with really compelling imagery that will also present in more detail what their project is shortly. And lighting actually will be incorporated with that as well. Just to talk a little bit about our selection process, we also, similar to the group that just shared their RFQ process posted to Cafe and used that as a resource. We invited the following selection committee members to join us in helping us to determine and walk us through this process, which is really informative and supportive to us from start to finish. And so first we circulated a request for qualifications specifically. From that, we all reviewed, the selection committee reviewed that and identified, who we wanted to invite for that next phase. And then we invited those artists to the RFP phase of the project. And from there, individually scored, came together as a group, met and determined our finalists. And then invited each of those artists to present to us on Zoom virtually to share in more detail their more thorough proposals and site specific. And then we awarded the applicants, which you see our awardees here. Total applicants were 159. Preliminary selections went to 36. We had 9 RFP finalists and then 3 awardees who you see here today. And now I'd like to call up our artists. I think first we're starting with Chris. Chris, if you can join us up here at the podium and walk us through. We've given each of them about 5 minutes to just share briefly with you their project, a little bit about their background, who they are.
Hello, everyone. I'm Chris Lepan. Thank you for having me here. In my practice, I based all of my work around a tradition that's known as ledger art. So I'm always drawing on old paper and old ephemeral things that I can find. Kind of switching that up a little bit recently, but these are some examples on the bottom you'll see of some of my drawings and mixed media work. And above is a large scale installation that's at O'Hare Airport. So showing that my work can not only just exist on a piece of paper, but it also has scalability and can be transformed into many different venues and ways. So I'm an enrolled member of the Kaw Nation. I would call ourselves Kanza Nikashinga. And Kansas took its name from our people. So I think it's very important to have Kanza representation as much as possible in the state and wherever possible. And also it's great to see the Keeper of the Plains sculpture as a really prominent symbol of Wichita as well. And so I think having Kanza representation, it would be a nice continuity from the Keeper of the Plains downriver. And also it's really interesting too how our Kanza River actually flows into the Kanza Reservation across the state line and becomes Kaw Lake. So, and I was just there yesterday. So, This is some of the imagery that I'm thinking of as I'm processing exactly what the imagery will be. I haven't quite figured it out yet, but on the left is one of my ancestors, Mrs. Papan, who owned a berry business in Topeka. So the Papan family is very tied to rivers in Kansas. So also one of my ancestors is Charles Curtis, who is the vice president with Calvin Coolidge. So if you didn't know that there was a Native American vice president, now you know. And the picture in the center is supposedly a Kansa man who was in Washington, D.C. in the mid 1800s. And it's just such a striking image. I use him a lot in my artwork. You may have seen him in the previous one. And the map that you see there is a section of a map I just purchased on eBay, which is from the 40s, I think. 1940s, yeah, so it was during World War II, and it's an aeronautical chart of the Wichita area, and it actually shows the Color Reservation before the Arkansas River was dammed and flooded Kaw City. So it's a really interesting piece of history, so I want to include that in my work. And then my friend Pauline Sharp, who has lived in Wichita all of her life, sent me that image of Wichita encampment. And I don't know if that would work its way into that. These are just, it's kind of like a mood board type thing going on here. And so this is what I proposed to the committee. Will be, so basically it'll be digital files and combined with drawing and mixed media artwork, which will then be printed on glass panels. And Jana here referred me to the company that did the reflection part pieces. So they're tried, tested, and true here in Wichita. So I'm really excited to work with them and to create this process, working on glass. So there's some different native designs, ribbon work along the edges. I just use that photo as a reference because, in my drawing, it really comes from the photos, and I try to replicate the photo as much as possible. And I also incorporate historic maps, obviously, and then incorporating that aeronautical chart as well. So these would be like glass panels mounted on the retaining walls onto the limestone facade. And then this is just, there's supposed to be a video that links to that. We didn't get a chance to test it out, so, but you all know the reflection park and everything, so. And then this is just some quick technical specs on how the glass can be mounted to the retaining walls. Obviously, the limestone veneer would be not flat, so they would have to compensate for that, but it should be minimally invasive as far as the facade is concerned. And too, I wanted it on glass so that the limestone wouldn't be totally obscured either, that you would have that sense of it, you could see through it, and the color of it would also come through in different ways. And as far as lighting is concerned, I'm working with a lighting designer local here in Wichita. And he had some really great ideas, but he's not sure how to work it out yet. So that's kind of a thing that's going to happen organically. And one of the things you're talking about was lighting it around the edge. So at nighttime it would light up and, kind of glow. But if the panels are too big, then probably we'll have to either do some backlighting or just front wash lighting as well. But, put on timers and that sort of thing. So, yeah.
Thank you so much, Chris. I think we can do you want to do questions specifically for Chris now, or might we?
Or let's do it with each artist so that it's fresh. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah.
And I should also mention Chris resides in Chicago currently.
Yes.
Do we have questions from council? Remember, these are concept designs. I do have a question just regarding some of the smaller shapes like the crosses and some of the bends. Are you envisioning all of those pieces to be glass, or are you thinking of different materials for some of those shapes?
Everything would be glass.
Everything would be glass.
Yeah, so the larger panel, it would actually be like probably smaller panels put together. Depending on what printer and black folks think would be the safest, largest size.
Questions? That's
How will is there any concern of the colors fading out over time, being exposed to sun?
So what I am told is that the printing process, this was supposed to show like the process of how it's basically like a gigantic digital printer. And so the printer prints the image with ceramic based ink, which is then baked into the glass. So then it's as far as these, yeah, so as far as these are, in bright sunshine. However long these will last is how long.
remember correctly, the way the LAT described it, Monique, this is 2 panels of glass. And then the pigment is in between the panels, and then it gets put in the kiln so that it fuses into it.
It
Yes.
should be seen
Sorry,
for a
remember.
very long time and
Yes.
brief, et cetera. But we will confirm all that as we go through the process, but it has to be in order to sustain the elements here.
Yeah, everyone knows, they understand that it's all gonna be outdoors and exposed to elements.
I just really appreciate like hearing about your background and your family and your history and how relevant this is to our community and visitors. I think it adds so much to this project.
Thank you. Glad to be a part of it.
I do imagine that we would have some object labels or something of the sort. Expand a bit on that, history and at length and text.
Yes.
So maybe link to, again, I don't know how doable this is, but hopefully a website for all of the artists, because there is deeper context and layered meaning in everybody's work that you can take with it what you want when you see it. Hopefully that's enough. And if you want to dig deeper, it's all public art, that there's access to more information.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you.
Miss- Just mention where you're from as you come up to. I think that will be helpful. You learn background.
Hello. My name is Ivan DePena. I currently live in Charlotte, North Carolina, via born and raised in Miami, Florida, moved to Charlotte from New York City. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Where's the? So there, I think. All right, so I just wanted to quickly kind of walk through some previous projects that have a direct affiliation with the current the chosen proposals. Throughout my work, there is definitely a connection to the site. So pretty much all of my projects are slightly different, but they are all driven by the sort of the history and the location specific sort of inspiration. This is a project in Aventura, Florida, at a library that was torn down or demolished by Hurricane Wilma. I took the hurricane data from the storm for the 24 hours and used the wind speed, the direction, and the duration to generate this form. So this is I'm using the work that's actually very much inspired by natural and the environment. So this piece is literally the physical representation of the wind that sort of taking a lighter side to the storm. And I wanted to actually show there's going to be curvature and there's bent large pieces of formed steel extrusions here that is a complicated process through 3D and CNC rolling that will be used in this project as well. This project is for the Duke Energy Tower. It's a new building in Charlotte, North Carolina. Duke Energy is our main utilities sort of power utility company. So this is inspired by the photon, which is the smallest particle of light and energy. It can't be photographed, so this is the loose representation. This isn't, I took creative liberty here of what that might look like. So I'm using this as well as to show the sort of organic quality that can be sculpted using steel armatures as a base. This piece has light components and a 6-story tall facade element as well. So this is showing the interior steel armature being welded on site in Denver, Colorado. This is actually the foam, then high density fiberglass that's been put on after. And this is me sort of getting very upset, OCD, as I usually do about the form itself. So it was, 3D printed, everything was done sort of software digital based. This is a piece that was inspired by the site, which used to be an old gold mine. So I took a piece of gold and sort of blew it up and focused on that faceting of it. And this piece has about 3,000 individual unique pieces that we cut on CNC machine at the studio. This is an MLK memorial in Atlanta, Georgia, inspired by his famous "I Have a Dream" speech, sort of taking the idea of this hilltop and forming an abstract sort of mini mountain. As you walk by, you can see on the upper right, there are LED elements, so there are sensors on the pedestrian walkway that send the word "dream" up through the sculpture as the pedestrians walk by. So the piece itself is called Dreamcaster, and kind of a reflection on the idea that everybody, has their individual dreams. That sort of process. Onto the proposal here for the Wichita. Again, inspired by the idea. I won't read this, for verbatim, but I just want to kind of bring out the idea that it's inspired by the sort of dynamic quality and the fluidity of the river, sort of a literal reflection on this sort of surface tension and the wave structure. Having had discourse with the landscape architect and the commissioning agencies to incorporate the natural element and the seating element as well. So there was landscape that was going to be sort of designed in these spaces. So the intention here is to work tightly in collaboration with the landscape architect to incorporate that into the sculpture itself. So and there's also a functional quality to it where there's actually benches. If you look a little bit closer, each piece stems from a sort of bench-like element that would also have a landscape element incorporated into it. We are currently working with the engineer, and today is going to be my first site visit. So trying to figure out whether or not we are going to build footings into the ground or use the benches themselves as the structure, which is our preference, I think, instead of actually tying it to the ground. The benches themselves would have a nice, structural quality. They're going to be big precast moments. Just looking at this canopy structure, thinking of how it can be both functional. We're working on the mesh material, sort of researching what we can do with that. I live with a company from Germany that does meshes for bridges. Environmentally sensitive, looking at the avian sort of qualities. I understand this is a big sort of migration path as well down south through here. So we want to be really sensitive to that, sort of the ecological ramifications of making this. Excuse me. So, this different views of the piece throughout. I want it to be as fluid and amorphous as possible. The view from the top. And we have yet to sort of figure out the lighting element, but we're as much as lighting being incorporated into the budget, the better.
Any questions for Ivan?
Sure. You're good. Thank you. Yeah.
I think Lindsay has a. You're raising her
Oh,
hand.
yeah. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. So sorry I couldn't be there. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry I couldn't be there in person today, but loving being able to attend virtually. My question is the landscaping that's underneath the shade structures, like the trees in particular. Is there any concern about it growing into the netting, or is it just a forced perspective that there won't be trees directly under it?
Yeah, well, we're gonna plan on sort of having that design so they don't interfere with one another. There was one version of this where the actual green was growing onto the mesh itself, which, we haven't ruled that out 100%. So I think that there's still an issue or a concept that's actually incorporating the green into the piece itself, which I'd like to kind of elaborate on as we develop the new design development. But yeah, those trees will be located specifically not to interfere with the sculpture.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
A little challenging to tell the height from this rendering, but it looks like it may be possible for a child or adult to like climb up to the top of the Y,
Yeah.
right? So it just suggests in the production, looking at, maybe those are a little bit higher so that that's not quite so easy. Yeah, that one maybe,
Yeah.
I think.
Certainly, yeah, we're gonna work with the engineer and make sure that, first of all, that it's engineered, so if somebody does decide to climb on it, like, nothing breaks. And the second part is, we usually do, at the studio, it's a 10-foot sort of rule where nobody can jump on, and, we can't, get inebriated, people jumping on it.
Specifically,
Yeah,
bro.
yeah, I don't want any point. No, anyway, seriously, like that we're definitely gonna address that for sure. Thanks.
I have a question about the benches themselves. Are you also designing the benches, or are you working with the landscape architect and designing
Well,
those?
we sort of both. Yeah, so we're definitely gonna be collaborating with landscape architect, but the benches are going to be designed to be part of the sculpture.
Yeah.
They're gonna be done in precast and 3D modeled and designed for,
Because right now, the design of the benches, it works so well with the forms that you have, and I would hate to lose that connection with the.
We actually, in our base bid, we had benches planned for it, but knowing our bid was actually where we had done full selection, so we backed that out to have the extra money.
I remember those
Didn't put it
renderings,
back
yeah.
into Ivan's.
Yeah, the bench funds from the original design were incorporated into the budget of the sculpture, so we can definitely integrate that, and that's the goal.
Also, this image, I mean, it's like the perfect image to show this light post, I think really obstructs like the sideline of your sculpture.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just a rendering image, right? But if there's any way, to privilege the sculpture through the placement, I'm sure it's even.
That's it. Yeah.
That's not that you're wrong, but yes, good to know.
I agree with you 100%, and we definitely address that in the, as we move forward. So if we
Is there,
something that's a little bit more contemporary,
Yeah.
minimal in front of those, that would be fantastic to specify the fixture. That's actually, it doesn't necessarily, clash.
is there existing lighting infrastructure that you have to stick with, or is this like, can you?
So,
Given those, can you tell us a little bit about
Okay, so-
those challenges?
We purchased new light poles for the entire corridor
Uh-huh.
early, so we sourced them. I won't say that absolutely those will be there, but we do have street lighting and pedestrian lighting, so we got rid of the 30-foot poles.
Okay.
The Evergy poles basically went to a lower level pole. So they're a little bit more pedestrian scale, and we get better coverage, even coverage across kind of the promenade plus the street. They are on for even spacing. When we get into lighting, I think on the structure, we can have that conversation if from the structure to accommodate removal.
That'd be great.
That's a question that needs to be answered. That'd be great if we can, but we'll have to wait and see what we can do.
Yeah, in my opinion, it would be ideal if we could sort of integrate lighting into the piece that actually replace the required foot candles that are needed for that area.
I think that would better activate the space as a gathering space.
That'd be great. Let's see.
do.
We'll aim for that, for sure.
What other comments, questions?
Talk about what the mesh material is, that'll be on the overhead portions.
Yeah, right now we're looking at a thin gauge, the 1/16 sort of cable structure. There's a company called Carl Stahl. They're based in Germany, but they have offices here in the States that do this for hundreds and hundreds of bridges and things like that that are these larger structural elements. They actually have lighting integrated into them, some of them. So we're looking at that as a possibility. So they have LEDs that's on a grid, it's on the mesh, which would be pretty neat. Hoping that the budget would accommodate for that as well. But we want to be careful. The mesh is going to be something that we need to kind of dig into quite a bit, for both wind and icing and that sort of thing. So the thinner the gauge of the material is what we're understanding, the less the risk of ice forming on the actual metal and causing a shift when the wind hits. We don't want these things to become sails, and also we don't want ice falling on people. So those are all considerations that we're going to take. But for now, the short answer is it's going to be a sort of metal mesh material that's going to be attached to the roll pipes.
Well, thank you so much. This is another great design and super exciting to see how this evolves.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ivan.
Thanks again.
Grand finale. Hi, everyone. My name is Scott Hockey. I'm a Detroit-based site-specific installation artist and public sculptor. I definitely like to work with the history of places and sites. It's kind of become the only way I work. So when I applied for this and found out that I was a finalist, I came to Wichita. So I like to start by telling this story. I came on the day in January when it was the ice storm. When I landed, everyone's phones lit up with the emergency alert. So I had kind of the city to myself, which was really interesting. I've been through Wichita before. I've been through Kansas before. I've taken road trips through, but I don't really know Wichita. So for me to feel confident in proposing an idea, I have to come to a place, walk around, feel it a little bit. And as I told my Lyft driver, that was a good crash course in feeling Wichita. I walked around all day. I walked down to the site, which was like the tundra. I think it was interesting to see, the transitions that's happening along the river. Another thing which I found out is I was calling it the Arkansas River, and I learned, no, it's Arkansas River, and now I'm learning today, no, none of those are correct. But I actually really like old brutalist works from the 1960s and 70s. But I do feel like you could see the transition that was happening between these very gray, hard, sharp areas of the river being now turned more organic. And I also walked around very specifically to see what's the public art that already exists here? What do they already have? And some of it I liked and some of it I didn't, I would admit. But I think that's pretty normal with art. I was unable to see the keeper of the planes because of the ice storm. I did not jump over that because I knew there were cameras, even though I wanted to. So for me, all these things contribute to giving me ideas. I really love the site specificity of these works, Georgia Gerber, I think, where, again, I might not like all of them, but I like how they appear on you unexpectedly, and especially in this weather, how it affects you. I like these works that were reclaiming the old railroad, right? So another aspect of my work, especially coming from Detroit, is that I like to use old material and kind of recreate it in a way that gives a new perspective on things. I think I also just like to use wasted material. I like to recycle. I like to reinvent and upcycle, I guess you could say. So seeing the things that already existed in all the different areas and all the different categories was a big part of my very icy, cold trip. I only fell down twice, and I looked really cool when I did it. So I did walk to the site. So I have site 1 or area 1, which is the electrical infrastructure site. That's as close as I could get, to be honest, because I would slide. If I would try and climb that hill, I would slide back down. I can see from this angle, though, the stormwater sewer gates and the concrete around that, and that very boring fence around the electrical box. It's a very typical chain link fence with probably plastic in between to obfuscate it. So at least I know what I'm dealing with, and I could get the topography a little bit. Another aspect of me is that I kind of nerd out on history. So I want to know everything. What happened here? These are old Sanborn maps. If you don't know about Sanborn maps and you're a nerd, let me tell you, Sanborn was a company that did fire insurance maps. And the Library of Congress has many of them, hundreds of them, scanned in online. So you can go to any city, like Wichita, and find what it looked like. So just even seeing that there were islands, or the Iron Bridge, or Wonderland Park, like stuff like that doesn't exist anymore, interesting to me. And of course, learning about Delano's history and kind of the difference between one side of the river and the other was interesting to me. But coming into Wichita, there's only one thing I really knew, and that's on Wichita lineman. I found myself coming back to that again and again. It just made so much sense. I'm designing artwork around, about, integrated with, distracting from electrical infrastructure. And there's a sign or a song called Wichita Lineman, which I love that song, and I heard it when I was a kid, and there's countless versions. I made a playlist of 50 versions, a 3.5-hour playlist that I would listen to on repeat to drive myself insane, but to give me ideas. And I couldn't get away from it. I thought it's almost too perfectly connected to this site. So I went with it. Another angle for me is just that I've always had an interest in these forms connected with electrical infrastructure. So the metal armature of these giant, they look like armies when you're driving down the freeway in rural parts of the world. But I'm also nostalgic for kind of the old creosote coated telephone poles or pilings and railroad ties that decay over time, but show character of time. So the Wichita Lineman, which was written in 1968, would harken more to the wooden telephone pole or lineman pole. This line in the middle here, I know I need a small vacation, but it don't look like rain. I really love that, because basically the line is saying that you're only going to get a day off when it rains. And it's not raining because it's Kansas. Years ago, when I drove through Kansas, I remember seeing an old windmill in the midst of the new turbines. And I felt like that was really striking. That was just a very deep, profound signal of time, right? Where we were, where we're going, what was, and what's going to be, the future to pass. So all these things are kind of germinating in my head. And I would also say there's other symbols I think of when I think of Kansas and Wichita. I did drive through years ago El Dorado Park, and I was really taken with the kind of like, it's a flooded forest, right? So, and the trees are kind of sticking out in that way. So there's a part of me that's interested in this kind of the history of Wichita being visualized in like a root system, or layers, like sedimentary layers. And that will come into play as a part of this. And you can see this on the right corner. This is a 410 steel, a rusted steel wall. So with all this in mind, this image of the lineman working on the poles and that perspective, here's the sculpture that I proposed. It's based on a sculpture that I already made called the Arkansas Traveler. And the Arkansas Traveler is a 40-foot galvanized steel air motor windmill, tri-leg windmill from the 1920s or 30s. The fan blade is 12-foot diameter, and it's an anthropomorphic figure out of a windmill that's kind of reclining, like a reclining figure. You can see he's reclined against an electrical pole, a utility pole, and he's in the midst of this infrastructure area. So in my mind, he's the Wichita lineman on the day off. He's got that time to relax now. He's resting. He's not against a tree. There's no tree. There's an electrical pole. But it's also, is he retired? Are these windmills retired? Is it over for them? Are turbines taken over? Is it sad? I also kind of played with the idea that he's depressed. He's on the Delano side of the river. He's drunk. He's drunk and he's leaning against the pole at the end of the night. The chain link fence that wraps around the actual electrical infrastructure that you can see on the right, that's where I envision maybe just swapping out the chain link fence with something a little more dynamic and aesthetically pleasing. That's the Core-10 seal wall. You've probably seen Core-10 screens surrounding things. That can be laser cut with whatever patterns I design. And that's where I envision kind of designing a pattern that's showing layers of history. Just to give you a sense of scale. The piece is currently painted with a pigment called bone black. And the reason for that is because when I made this piece for Crystal Bridges Museum in Bentonville, Arkansas, Crystal Bridges is on the Trail of Tears. And there's a very famous photo of a mountain of bison bones. And that photo was taken in Detroit. A lot of people don't know that. But that photo was shot in Detroit because Detroit had the factory that would grind the bones down and make them into a fertilizer, a pigment. It was used to clarify wine and sugars, but all these uses in the late 1800s. That photo was taken at this time that they call the bone crisis, where there was so many people digging up bones and sending them via train to Detroit that places like Carbon Works in Detroit were stockpiling them. And they took those photos to basically show the stockpile they had at that time. But now it's emblematic of how the white man nearly eradicated the American bison and Manifest Destiny, and it had a guy in a bowler hat on top, and it's very disgusting now. So this piece was kind of touching on all that by being painted with that pigment made from the bones. It's still made in Detroit. It's been made for 150 years, and it's called Bone Black. I envisioned for this piece somehow that aspect being connected, but the piece for an outdoor public sculpture that's going to last for decades and decades, it can't just be painted with bone black. It has to be painted in a more, it has to be powder coated or plated in a way that would make it more durable. So that one of the elements of this piece that I feel is up for grabs and we're all going to have discussions about is the finish, the color, why. I would say I'm very open to that, but I'm not gonna acquiesce to the point where the head of the windmill, the fan, is painted like a sunflower and we have green legs, right? So there's limits to what I want to do. I do think that I was angling towards something that connected to Wichita, Kansas, color-wise, and that would also stand out and be prominent and do what it's supposed to do, which is distract from the more boring aspects of this location, the sewer grates and the electrical parts. The function of the power line is that it really will be a stabilizing pole that's sunk into the ground. A 50-foot pole sinks in the ground about 8 feet and sticks out 42 roughly. It could be further anchored with concrete. The base of the piece will have a concrete footing in strategic points. I'm open to that. I'm open to whether it's on an entire concrete footing or whether there's parts of it where there is ground cover underneath. I know that the maintenance of the ground cover is something that nobody wants to deal with, so I'm okay with acquiescing to landscape architects in that category. I don't like to make work that needs to be maintained. I like to make work that it's done and nature will do what it's going to do it for years to come. For example, I just made a piece where birds nested in it. And for me, that was bird approval. I'm happy about that. I'm not going to say get rid of the birds. So I'm not interested in making something that's going to need to be cleaned or repainted. I want it to just last forever. The core steel you can see will also be anchored via concrete. I'm not sure if that's something I can already access because the fence is already using a footing there. That's something I have to find out. The top of the utility pole, that's also kind of something I want to play around with. I'm thinking of it very classically, like glass insulators and the wooden crossbars. But maybe there could be something more organic about it. It looks more tree-like. I'm open to that. Those are parts that we're going to work on. And then another part that's very important is the 12-foot access path so that the linemen, the actual linemen, we're still working, can get around to get to the electrical box or the water and sewage people can get to the stormwater drains. See from overhead view here. For scale, you can see me there. And that's it. You're welcome. Questions?
Is the wooden pole, like, are you planning on just using a wooden?
Utility poles, yeah, the same way you see utility poles. I'll be picky about it though, because brand new utility poles, like womanized utility poles, are very smooth, and I find them kind of boring. So I have used them before. I've worked with electrical companies before and had them take their derrick truck and put them in the ground. And I want to go and select one that I think has more character, but it won't be painted. It won't be changed color. It will be the nature of the utility pole. It won't be pumped. There won't be any electrical going through it. That's another thing I should point out is we did talk about lighting. I prefer natural lighting. I prefer, I mean, in the drawings, the lighting that was in the drawings, I thought, well, that's going to cast light at night. I like the idea of the sun creating shadows as it passes that move. But when we talked about it in our meeting, I became more open to the idea of lighting. I think that I haven't envisioned where it would come from yet, above or below or whatnot, but I'm open to it.
I think the contrast of the wooden pole and this, like, is it like the powder coated structure that the color to be determined?
Yes.
Interesting. My challenge would be maybe with a base or something to unify that, to signal to the everyday pedestrian that this is part of the arts, right? And
You're
not.
talking about the pole? I kind of like that they don't know. I mean, me personally, one of the things I like is a little bit of mystery in the work so that you get intrigued enough to get closer to find out. And maybe you read the plaque and then we'll see.
Your intent for this to be climbable? Because
Oh, boy.
I can already see this thing. I'm gonna go climb it with Jeff.
Yeah, I can climb it when I make it. Intent wouldn't be the right word, but the cliche I often say is that all public sculpture is climbable if you get drunk enough. Some will try. It's one of the parts of this process is going to be making this so incredibly sturdy and safe to be climbed that we don't have to worry about that. Someone will climb it, yes. Do you put up signs that say don't climb it? Do you put a camera on a pole that's filming people walking the path anyway? Probably. I'm sure that the amount of lighting and security cams that are probably already planned to be on this walking path will be somewhat of a deterrent. But I don't think you can ever prevent somebody from trying to climb something. What you can prevent is that you can make sure it's safe, that if they do climb it. I grew up in a time when our playground was full of metal poles. That's what we climbed on. So I am aware of that, and it has been exhibited in museums where usually there's guards. But yeah, I think that the biggest deterrent, I don't want to put a fence around it, right? The biggest deterrent is lighting, signs, cameras.
So the image in yellow has the wings, the other two do not.
No, they all have. You're looking at it from different views and it gets real narrow. The wings are actually the size of an Arkansas Traveler boat. So the wings are kind of relating to the river, relating to boats. And from directly down on, you hardly see. And they kind of wrap around the whole. Powder coating also, this will have to be powder coated in parts. It's too big for the powder coater in Detroit, like a 40-foot windmill. So it'll probably be powder coated in 2 or 3 sections that then get assembled on site. So if it ever did need to move, it could be unbolted and moved again.
The question I have is about the photos of the existing piece. Are you reusing that piece, or it's gonna be a new build?
It's gonna be a altered build.
You are reusing the same one?
Definitely.
That, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm personally not too concerned about the climbing. I've myself have climbed plenty of
Sure.
public art pieces.
Yeah.
I think, nope, not at all.
Well done.
I think that, it's, safety is the main thing, and, that
Yeah.
it's not something that is gonna crumble, obviously. I'll just echo what Chloe said. At this point, the only piece that feels, like a sort of a disconnect is the pole. When I see the brighter colors, like the yellow, the blue, the red, maybe that creates enough contrast where, like, my brain wants them to be very different so that they make sense. If that makes sense. If you have this wooden pole,
Yeah.
then the metal, I kind of want it to be like a bright yellow, right? So that there's like that visual contrast that in my mind, it makes it make more sense versus a core 10 windmill or a rusted windmill.
The core 10 wouldn't be the windmill. The core 10
Right.
would be, let's get back to it. Like the core 10 would be the screen.
And that is the other comment I have right now. So there's a core 10 structure
Yep.
with laser cut motifs. Then you have a natural wood pole.
Yeah.
And then you have this windmill that may or may not be color coded in a bright material. So I'm thinking about all the different materials that are being introduced on the site. And the only thing I wonder is, how do they work together? Do they
Yeah.
work together?
Yeah.
So just something to consider, right? The core 10 is so specific in its look. But then there's 2 other very distinct materials that are also and dance with it. And I wonder if the dance is happening. Is there rhythm, or are they kind of choppy, right?
Sure.
That's sort of where I'm at. Again, I know that it's a concept design, so
Yeah.
these are just the comments that come to mind. It's the different materials introduced on the site.
Sure. Yeah, and I would say that choppiness is what led me to introduce the core 10, because the chain link fence with the plastic stripping going through it, to me, felt like too much of a distraction. Like, the work is supposed to distract from that, but I don't want it to be that you're looking at that as opposed to this. So I'm more open than anything to changing the core 10 to something else,
Sure.
but not leaving the chain link. Right.
Oh, no.
So like,
Get rid of that.
right.
Get rid of that channel for sure.
But yeah, I feel pretty strongly about the concept of the utility pole.
Sure.
And I am gonna be picky about what that looks like.
Sure.
So as the design moves on, it's going to alter, and there'll probably be other versions.
Sure.
And yeah, like I said, I think that's gonna be a very group discussion about the color. The other thing you have to think about is the green grass and the contrast of the work in summertime,
Yeah.
and then the snow and the contrast of the work in the snow. So picking the colors is a big deal, and that's why I've left it to be determined.
Since we're talking about color,
Let's hear it.
you have the blue in the middle, and I know that there's some blue structures down the road in those apartments.
Kind of, the I-beams that are blue, yeah,
And this is where I'll just throw my own very personal
okay.
view, and it's like that. I personally don't like those sculptures or that blue that they picked.
I've heard other people say the same thing. I can't say,
Just gonna throw it out there.
got it.
Very strong opinions about those.
Yeah, I did think that, and I thought, you know, I don't want to be too close to that and have a similar color. And yet I've also, in my research, seen that there's kind of a Kansas blue. So, yeah, I don't know. I think it has to do with how it's gonna look. There's gonna have to be a lot of powder coat samples. There's gonna have to be like when I go to my guy and say like, what are the different ways we can do this? I'm gonna end up with a lot of examples that we'll want to all look at.
I love the playfulness of it. And you're also competing with pretty large structures around it.
Yeah.
There's that massive hotel directly behind it. You're gonna have that kind of stainless steel tower, right? So
Right.
you're competing with a lot, and I think the playfulness will help. It's sort of this
Yeah.
leaning structure that you want it to be upright, but it's not, right? It's kind of leaning. So I think that'll help. Color obviously would be a big
Yeah.
factor too to make it stand on its own.
Yeah, I think walking around and seeing the scale of everything and thinking, I want this to be something that stands out from across the river, from a hotel, so that people are kind of drawn to it in that way.
Comments, questions? Again, we're at 30% design, right? We're looking at concepts.
I have a quick question. Sorry, recognizing that we're still early in the design phase here, but just how irrigation will play in this at this site. Is there any concern with like the final coating? How sprinklers, if we have any in that area, will affect this work?
We find the one with the overhead. So you can see in the one on the left that I'm placing it where it's not on the slope, it's before the swale. Again, angling it so that there's the 12-foot path and it's not touching the concrete of the sewer gates. So I was basing it on that topographical schematic I was given.
Lindsay, I think that's gonna go hand in hand with what the landscape eventually becomes for this area. Same way with Ivan's work, all of that, we're gonna work together now and try to weave them all together in a way that makes sense. And that would include irrigation too.
Thanks, Jeff.
Well, thank you. I appreciate all the research that you have done and all the artists have done. And yeah, thank you so much, Courtney. Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you all so much for your time. We're very excited to see this through and appreciate all your input and insights.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so that leaves we need to approve the concept designs that were presented. Anybody feel comfortable making a motion?
I would move to approve the concepts as presented this morning from each of the three artists.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Great. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, passes unanimously, so you are free to continue with your designs. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And on to our last item on the agenda, which is, wait, is that the last item?
Yes, the last thing.
Okay. So we're looking at our meeting times. Yeah.
We're looking at election of officers.
Hey, where am I? Oh, yeah, totally. Sorry, I apologize. Looking at nominations of officers, Lindsay or Jenna, do you wanna help us with that? Since this is a new process that we have.
Well, it's not a new process. It's not a
New to us.
process, but it does seem to be
We're following rules now.
new to design council and it being done on a regular basis. But the bylaws stipulate that election of officers takes place annually at the August meeting. We are at the August meeting. So I asked all of you to think about nominations. We do not have term limits.
on chair and vice chair. They can be renominated, nominate new officers if you like. But we'll simply take nominations and have a vote.
Easy enough. So I'm assuming that everybody read the email and looked through this prior and you came ready for it with nominations.
I nominate Armando for chair again. Sure.
I second. You're just such a great chair. But unless there's, like, if that's, do you feel that that's working well with your, like?
Yeah, I mean, it's not, Lindsay did a bait and switch on me, but that's okay. A lot more.
Thank you,
convincing.
and sorry, Armando.
You're okay. It's been fun. Sure, I accept the nomination.
Thank you, Armando.
But I guess we gotta vote on that nomination first before you.
Yes. Do you want?
Do you want to lead the vote?
Yeah, all in favor for Armando continuing his reign as the chair? Say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Guess you're it, man.
Good deal. All right. Well, thank you, everyone, for keeping me as your chair. I'll continue for another year. Do you have nominations for vice chairs? Because we only have two, chair and vice chair.
Assume you still want to do it.
What?
I assume you still want to do it.
I'm fine with it.
I'm nominating.
I'm not, yeah, I concur.
All right. All in favor to have, all opposed? Wow, we're just risen through it. This might have been the fastest vote in history yet. Great.
Well done, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Things stay the same. All right, Asma Rice.
Just
Final item in the agenda.
One item, and when we sent out the agenda packet, I asked everyone to complete a quick little survey on your preferred day, time, meetings. A few of you responded, so I'm just going to remind everyone to go ahead and complete the survey, and we'll talk about it at the September meeting.
Okay. And is that primarily because of scheduling issues this year?
We've struggled a little bit over the summer, and I know that summers are difficult, and I know this has been a busy summer for everybody, but we just want to make sure that we're meeting at a time that accommodates everybody's schedules the best so that we can have the full body here as much as possible. If Mondays at 10 a.m. work for everyone, that's the best time. We'll keep it as it is. We just wanted to look at options.
For September's meeting, it's the first Monday's Labor Day, so we have it the
It's
next.
on the 2nd. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Should be on your calendars for the 8th.
Okay, well, is that the only item there? Okay. Well, thanks, everyone. This is a fun meeting, and we'll adjourn at 11:15. Thank you.